Formula 1 is the peak of engineering prowess, where the greatest minds on the planet come together to build 20 curvy things that protect 20 slabs of replaceable meat as they hurtle around the globe at 1,000,000 miles per hour. That being said, even some of the greatest minds can run into hiccups, and if you don't believe me, some Donny decided to hire me at Mercedes about 10 years ago. So from the rich energy scandal to signing too many drivers to your outfit, here are 10 instances, in no particular order, where F1 teams are completely and utterly thick. Number 1. Arrows get scammed by a Nigerian prince. F1 was not always the financial powerhouse that it is nowadays, and while now we may still have to suffer with the consequences of F1 Twitter, from the team's perspective, more money is, funnily enough, quite a good thing. That wasn't so much the case at the end of the 20th century, Arrows coming into 1999 needing significant more funding just to stay afloat. Enter Malik Abdul Ibrahim, a Nigerian prince who offered to purchase a third of the team for a nice little sum of $125 million. Now if you've ever had, an email address, you might be familiar with this scam already. Some of you might just have fallen for it, and if that is you, I've heard clicking on the subscribe button gives you 5,000 Bitcoin. Anyway, team boss Tom Walkinshaw did fall for it, and the Arrows A20 rolled out of the garage with energy drink sponsor T- adorning the side pods. That branding changed over the first half of the year, at one point displaying an ambiguous countdown, perhaps the team's slow inevitable demise, as shockingly enough, out of that promised $125 million, Arrows received the same amount as they did points that season. Just kidding, they got sweet all. Walkinshaw was eventually able to wrestle his shares back as Ado Ibrahim ran back to Nigeria and kept a low profile by running for president in 2023. Sadly though, the damage had already been done. Arrows 2 vanished midway through the 2002 season, and it also wouldn't be the last time an energy drinks company crippled a team on false promises. Number 2. Haas trusts Rich Energy for some reason. Haas wouldn't fall for those scam emails in 2019, though they did believe a sentient mop instead. William Story-backed Rich Energy became the team's first ever title sponsor on the eve of that year's season, and the return of a black and gold livery aside, people were already rather skeptical of this guy. Hell, I should know, I ended up interviewing him back when I was pretending to be an F1 journalist in 2020. Rich Energy had a very simple mission. Was it to revolutionise the drinks market with new and innovative ideas? Was it to strive to be inclusive in this changing political landscape? No, it was to be better than Red Bull. Kind of a shame they didn't join the sport in 2025 then, isn't it? Add to that, the company having a grand total of £581 in their bank account in 2017, yet signing a $60 million deal 2 years later. This wasn't going to end well, was it? The season got off to an interesting start when the company began screaming their slogan from the rooftops after Haas finished ahead of Red Bull in pre-season testing, which as any actual F1 fan would know means f*** all. The company were then in the headlines for a different reason, as their logo came up in a copyright lawsuit with white bikes, Story continuing to attract the wrong attention in the courtroom, where he was described as a poor witness who, rather than answering questions, spiraled into speeches regarding his vision and began referring to himself in the third person. Anyway, as the season started, and funnily enough Haas were not better than Red Bull, Rich Energy didn't take that news particularly well. This came to a head at the midpoint in the year, the company announcing their split from the Haas F1 team, not via statement, but via Twitter, and thus would not be paying the team for the remainder of the year. William Story followed this up with his own statement that was just him driving a Rich Energy branded milk float. How Haas's legal team let this happen in the first place, plus how much of that team still have employment, are up in the air, as Rich Energy continued to war a farm on social media, my personal favourites being this one implying they sacked the Haas F1 team due to poor performance, and the mop himself shocking F1 engineers with his speed in an F1 car, claiming he was apparently faster than Lance Stroll, which really isn't the flex that you think it is. At least unlike Arrows, Haas still remain on the grid today, though it's kind of baffling that Rich Energy still hold an argument to be the second worst sponsor associated with that team. Number 3. McLaren Honda. Need I say any more? Obviously, we're not talking about the OG McLaren Honda, their long-running and successful partnership in the 80s and 90s, bringing the team tons of success as they powered the likes of the Professor and the lover of his 15-year-old students to a whole host of world championships. So, when the partnership was due to be renewed at the start of the turbo hybrid era, people were obviously excited. Though this didn't come without some risks. McLaren were already in a long-running partnership with Mercedes, who had produced the best engine by miles for the regulation changes in 2014, and had left competitors Ferrari and Renault in their hybrid-powered dust. The Woking squad were adamant, however, that this sort of arrangement would never allow a customer team to consistently challenge at the front, McLaren losing their work status after the Germans bought out the Brawn squad in 2010. Now at the time, that statement wasn't necessarily false. There was no obligation for customers to receive the same spec engine as the works team, that only amended after the farcical scenes of a 2017 Sauber running year-old Ferrari power into the fray. Problem was, McLaren turned to old friends Honda for help, only they had no idea what they were doing. That wasn't helped by McLaren pushing deadlines and specific targets regarding how the engine was meant to be packaged into the car, and the result was this embarrassing display of two world champions preferring to be remembered for this instead of anything they achieved on track in 2015.
Hey dude, I feel so confident speaking like an American.
Me too. Can't wait to eat a hot dog. I'm totally psyched, American bro. Woo! Yeehaw!
Yeah!
Yeehaw!
Fernando Alonso, comparing the engine to that from a GP2 car at Honda's home race, did little to improve relations, and after 3 embarrassing years at the tail of the field, McLaren and Honda parted ways, with the papaya team switching to Renault power for 2018, which if anything shows just how far they'd fallen. You could argue though, everything sort of worked out in the end for this one. Honda went on to power Toro Rosso and later Red Bull, who just said build the best engine you can and we'll get Aero Jesus to fit it into our car, and as they went on to be a driving force with Max Verstappen, a reshuffle at McLaren saw a certain Zach Brown brought in to stabilise the ship, which seems to have worked out rather well, hasn't it? Number 4. Renault don't care about succeeding in Formula 1. While Mercedes are remembered for their pioneering efforts and their utter domination from 2014 to that race in 2021, it hasn't cast a shadow large enough to obscure whatever the hell Red Bull, and more specifically, Renault were playing at during the same time period. The engine supplier made the decision to prioritise development at the end of the V8 era, leading to 4 consecutive titles with Sebastian Vettel behind the wheel. That, however, left them exposed coming into 2014, the RB10 being very capable of driving down the pit lane, then being wheeled back to the garage because it had already broken down. Newey's genius saved the team somewhat, with 3 wins courtesy of the boy whenever the Mercedes pair had a domestic, though it was pretty clear that the engine needed development, only Renault weren't prepared to deliver on that. Renault CEO, whose name I've just put up on screen because knows how you're meant to pronounce that, openly said he, quote, didn't care about F1 and therefore refused to sign off budgets to help improve performance, and that decision still arguably impacts the Alpine outfit today, whose engine is still underpowered compared to the rest of the field and being sent to the gulag in favour of Mercedes for 2026. As for the Red Bull partnership, the successes of the past were, well, quickly forgotten about. By 2016, the engine was rebranded as a Tag Heuer, and after a long and messy divorce, Red Bull made the equally stupid decision, at the time anyway, to side with Honda for 2019. Though, as we've already established, that worked out kind of well in the end. Number 5. Life's F1 engine ironically kills itself. Sticking with engines and dipping into the 90s, and quite frankly we could have a whole separate list of just weird shit that happened at this time in Formula 1. This was a time where every year loads of smaller outfits would pop up to Grand Prix and be forced to qualify for actual qualifying, where they were usually just last anyway. One of those teams was called Life, which was probably named after what it sucked out of most of the people that drove their cars. Life took the approach that bigger always meant better, which we all know is not necessarily true. Well, at least that's what I tell myself at night. This methodology led to the Life F190, which entered the 1990 season sporting a W12 engine. That's not really my forte, so having done plenty of research into the matter, long story short, it was f***ing dreadful. The power unit of a typical F1 car in the 90s produced about 700 horsepower. The W12 was lucky to get about half of that, officially clocking in at 450, and I'm pretty certain a lot of those horses were well on their way to the glue factory in this thing. Life didn't even have the car equipped with a rev counter, struggled to find drivers who wanted to drive for them, and that was no real surprise when they were at times almost 6 minutes slower than the next fastest car on a qualifying lap. Yes, you heard that right. I said minutes. If you want the full story, then head over to this, albeit very old video on the saga. Just bear with my pre-puberty sounding ass. Number 6. Virgin tried designing an F1 car without a wind tunnel. Wind tunnels are a vital part in F1 development, letting you test out new parts before they're sent to the track. It's also rather expensive, which is a bit of a problem when your F1 team is based out of South Yorkshire. Virgin Racing, yes, funny name, but we're better than that, were one of the plethora of new teams to join the grid in 2010, and then immediately fall off the grid when they realised going toe-to-toe with Ferrari and McLaren is a little harder than they originally thought. All 3 of these outfits had their little quirks, however. Lotus carried the name of iconic car manufacturer Lotus. HRT didn't stand for hormone replacement therapy and instead had BTEC Senna in one of their cars, and then there was Virgin, who had built their entire 2010 Challenger without a wind tunnel. Instead, the VR01 was made using CFD, or computational fluid dynamics, or one of those glowing little rectangles you're watching this video on right now. This is usually the preliminary step before sending parts to the tunnel for testing, though Virgin decided they didn't need that bit, which I'm sure had no relation to the front wing falling off 11 laps into day 2 of pre-season testing. It also wasn't fantastic to discover that Virgin had designed their fuel tank in such a way that it couldn't hold enough fuel to actually finish a Formula 1 race, which wasn't discovered straight away as usually a different technical gremlin had got in the way first. Marussia took a controlling stake in the team for 2011, and while wind tunnels were then used from there on out, the outfit's fortunes failed to improve, and having been rebranded to Manor Grand Prix in 2015, dropped off the grid on the eve of the 2017 season due to lack of funding. At the end of the day, Virgin predicted that wind tunnels would soon be a thing of the past as CFD models got stronger and stronger, and granted, looking at the current lay of the land, they weren't completely wrong, just 20 years too early. Number 7. Jaguar lose a real $300,000 diamond at the Monaco Grand Prix. Picture this, you're an F1 team, on the rocks financially, and then you get an idea to place a lucrative diamond in the nose cone of your F1 car, and then you decide to do it for the Monaco Grand Prix. In 2004, Jaguar appeared in the Principality, sporting an updated look to promote the new Ocean's 12 film, starring, funnily enough, Brad Pitt of all people. The big headline, however, were these diamonds fit into the nose cones of each of the cars, each one worth, well, apparently every news site's just made a number up, so $69 million each, who knows? Now, does it make sense to place a money-can't-buy diamond in the most susceptible part of a Formula 1 car around the most incident-prone track in the world? Well, no, but Jaguar did it anyway, and the nightmare unfolded almost immediately. On lap 1, Christian Klein binned it into the Lowe's hairpin, and to the team's horror, the diamond was nowhere to be found. Had it been stolen by a track marshal? Had it never been there to begin with? Who knows, but its whereabouts are still unknown to this day, and Jaguar didn't really seem to care anyway. They were more than content with the increased media coverage of the whole ordeal. Number 8. Sontra and Villeneuve's idiotic bet in Spa. Okay, so this entry was originally titled Any Ferrari Strategy from 2010 to Present Day, but then I thought actually that's quite a good top 10 list for itself. So instead, let's just cheat a bit and talk about a time when drivers were stupid instead. Eau Rouge and Raidillon is one of the most famous corner complexes in all of motorsports, and while a modern day F1 car could more than easily traverse them flat, that wasn't always the case. Throwback to 1999. Again, quite a lot happened that year, didn't it? 1997 world champion Jacques Villeneuve may now be better known for the floods of fecal matter that emanate from the Canadian's mouth, and back in the day, it seemed things weren't much different. While he was fighting to retain that title in 1998, granted not very well because Williams had seemingly forgotten how to be an F1 team that year, he had a rather spectacular shunt at the famous corner, fortunate to emerge without any serious injuries. The Canadian thus placed a bet with BAR teammate Ricardo Zonta at the 1999 Belgian Grand Prix weekend that he could take Eau Rouge full throttle without braking. So Friday rolls around and Jacques pulls it off. Granted, he did end up wedged in the barrier at the end of it though. Upon seeing this, one might think, probably not a good idea to do that. But Ricardo Zonta had other ideas. Off went the Brazilian after the red flag, and sure enough, here he is turning his BAR into the world's most expensive fidget spinner. Hey, at least Craig Pollock appears to see the funny side of things. Number 9. Sauber signed 3 drivers. Here's a question that even the Drive to Survive fans can get right. How many F1 cars are able to be run by each team on a given Grand Prix weekend? If you said 2, that's the right answer. If you said 1, well, it's nice to have Max Verstappen watching the show. And if you said 3, well, your name must be Manisha Kaltenborn. The 2010s were a period of great change in Formula 1, and that extended beyond the racetrack. An influx of women entering high-profile positions and fighting stereotypes, and yet political correctness was never really my thing. While the vast majority of these proceeded to excel in their roles, the sad reality was that just one high-profile mistake would damage the overall image of women in motorsport. Enter Kaltenborn over here. The Indian became the first female F1 team principal when she took the reins of the Sauber squad in 2013, and for the most part, she didn't do too bad of a job. Then 2015 rolled around. This is former Caterham F1 driver, one of the first pioneers of F1 Twitter, Guido van der Gaard, and having lost his drive at the end of 2013, signed up as a reserve driver for Sauber the following year. During that campaign, he was informed that he would be a race driver for the outfit in 2015. Fantastic news, until 5 months later when he was told actually his services wouldn't be required and that the team had opted to go with Marcus Ericsson and Felipe Nasr instead. That didn't make the Dutchman particularly happy, and he went on to file a lawsuit, which he eventually won. Sauber were told they had to uphold Van der Gaard's contract and allow him to race in the 2015 season, only they had 2 more drivers who felt rather the same way, in a situation that gets even more embarrassing when you find out Kaltenborn started out her F1 life as a lawyer in the team's corporate department. The lawsuits continued right up to the Thursday of the season-opening Australian Grand Prix, with the team having to sit out FP1 in fear of violating court orders and having their assets seized. Speaking of FP1, might be a good time to subscribe if you haven't already. Anyway, when all hope looked lost, Van der Gaard had a last-minute apparent change of heart, which also might have had something to do with the estimated $16 million he received to sit on his arse for the remainder of the year. Nasr and Ericsson were thus able to race the season, taking home 36 points and 8th in the championship. Van der Garde raced in other categories until 2023, and now terrorizes the broadcasting sector instead. Number 10, Oscar Piastri, and whatever the happened at Alpine in 2022. Now how can we forget this one? We're about to enter the summer break for the 2022 F1 season, and Sebastian Vettel has just joined social media to announce his retirement, and now everyone wants to kill themselves. In a shock move, Fernando Alonso decides he wants to fondle Lawrence Stroll's ballsack and fills the vacancy at Aston Martin, very much catching his current employers Alpine by surprise. That's okay though, they've got this new, young up-and-coming junior called Oscar Piastri. You know what, you might just have heard of him nowadays. Alpine thus puts out a press release announcing Oscar for the team in 2023, only the real Piastri has been asleep this entire time, and secretly negotiating with McLaren to put down the honey badger instead. Oscar thus becomes the first human to wake up, find out they're an F1 driver, and not be very happy about it, and thus ends up posting the now infamous tweet that I'm not going to waste your time reading because you've seen it a million times already. Alpine, now even more taken aback, publicly slag off their supposed signing as they fight with the contract recognition board to keep him at the team. However, it's ruled that Alpine's ties to the Australian were about as strong as Lando Norris's mental fortitude, and McLaren get their boy after all, leaving the French marquee to resort to the domesticated lineup of Pierre Gasly and Esteban Ocon for next season. The whole saga is incredibly embarrassing for Alpine, and hasn't looked much better with time. They resemble a ghost town after basically firing everybody, and still flounder at the rear of the field, while McLaren have made the Aussie a race winner and title contender. Who knows what just could have happened if Alpine had hired a competent legal department. Actually, that sounds like another one of my videos, so now you're done with this one, why not go and watch that instead? If you enjoyed this slightly different video, then let me know in the comments down below, as well as what you'd like to see next. Liking and subscribing also helps, and if you'd like to go the extra mile, then you can become a member or channel patron, and get these videos even earlier, as well as watch content that will never be uploaded to the main page. Anyway, I'll be back with another video soon, but until then, have a good one.